トゥルルー10年早いんだよ. Hi everyone, Matt here, and I'm doing a little bit of a late night video here for me. It's late night in Japan, early time in the West for most of you probably watching this video. And day 2 of Tokyo Game Show, the digital version has come to an end, and it's been kind of a not so eventful one as I kind of expected looking at the schedule. Not a whole lot of big news, but we did get a lot of interesting announcements today and some nice little videos, and I thought I'd talk about some of the bigger news that came out of the conference today from some of the bigger companies, and also some news that was related to that, the TGS stuff, because there was some news that came outside of the event that was very big. Now, I mentioned earlier in my first video that Microsoft actually had some big success today in Japan, where the Microsoft Series X and Series S sold out. Apparently, Microsoft's very happy with that news, and they're very humbled apparently by that. That, of course, kind of surprised that it sold out as quickly as it did. It sold out within 20 minutes on Amazon, within hours at most other big stores online in Japan, electronic stores, and Microsoft's website as well. Of course, no one knows how many systems were allocated to Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if it was not so many, but it's good news for Microsoft. Obviously, they need a big news like this for Japan to showcase that, hey, there's a market for the Xbox Series X in Japan. Obviously, they still got a lot to do, as I said last night from their showing, but it is a good thing to see that Microsoft is doing well here, because it's important that we do have competition, especially in the next gen space. Even with PlayStation 5 being such an important part, and Nintendo as well, it's good to have more competition, and I'm happy for that too. And hey, I might end up picking one up myself eventually, but not this fall, unfortunately. So that's a little bit sad for me. But we're going to go off the Xbox talk here. We're going to talk about Sega first off, because Sega actually had some interesting news today. First of all, there was a big rumor that came out today on Twitter. One of the MCs for the Sega events this weekend, she had tweeted out that this weekend we were going to hear new information about a brand new Ryugakutoku, aka Yakuza game. We were going to hear about some sort of new title that was coming out, and they were going to make a big announcement on the 27th. Obviously, people were getting excited. They're thinking, oh, well, maybe there's the new one, maybe number 8 was coming, or maybe they're going to do another Japan type one like Ishin or Kenshin. But unfortunately, very quickly that tweet was deleted, and later on, that MC, posted another tweet saying that she had made a mistake when she was reading the information about what was going to be talked about, and that there indeed will be no new announcement of a new Yakuza game this weekend. She apologized. Sad that happened, of course, and completely understandable. Mistakes happen. But I wouldn't be surprised if we do hear about a new Yakuza game coming in the next few months or next year or so. They come so quickly. And also, the last two systems, PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, when they launched, they got a special Japanese, like classic Japanese setting style game. Wouldn't be surprised to see the next generation systems get those. But of course, in the West, Yakuza 7's coming out very soon, so hey, there's new games still available there for that. But there was one other bit of Yakuza news that came, actually was reported by Variety, that we're going to get a brand new Yakuza series live action film. Now, this live action film is being produced with Sega and a company called 1212 Entertainment and Wild Sheep Content. I don't know those companies. There must be some Hollywood companies. And they talk about how important the series is, and they're going to make a big film out of it. Now, ironically, this is not the very first time that there's been a Yakuza live action film. Way back in 2007, when Yu Ga Kotoku 1 and 2, Yakuza 1 and 2 had come out, there was actually a live action film in Japan, and it was directed by Takeshi Miike, one of the famous Japanese directors of current era. And it's an interesting film. It's not the greatest film of all time, but it's a fun little film. And if you're a fan of the Yakuza series, I do recommend seeing it, but just don't expect anything grandiose about it. I think it's cool, obviously. There's also, I should say, there's been a live action TV series based off of spin offs for the Yakuza series. So it'll be interesting to see if this movie ends up being made. A lot of times video game movies get announced and never get made. But I wish them luck. I hope we get to see that coming in the future. Sega's presentation tonight was pretty much just showing off the trailers of games they'd already announced before. Things like Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster, Puyo Puyo Tetris 2, the new Phantasy Star Online game that's Phantasy Star Online 2. I think it was New Genesis or Next Genesis or something like that. That's coming out next year. Ironically, when that was announced, it was announced for I believe only on the Xbox in America, but it's been announced for Nintendo Switch as a cloud-based game, just like the original. It's going to come into the PlayStation 4 as well and PC. So that's a game that's going to be available on pretty much every system in Japan. In the West, it's probably going to be an Xbox exclusive for a while. And they talked about some other games as well, but mostly it was a celebration of Sega's 60th anniversary. They talked about some of the products they've made. They talked about like the Sega Tasanshiro commercials they were doing, and the 60th anniversary commercials and things like that. And for the most part, there was nothing new until we get to the end, where they had one big announcement, and it started off with the classic ding sound from a certain video game called Virtua Fighter. And they showed a trailer where we see some old footage of some Virtua Fighter esports tournament type thing. And we see then it's interspliced with like new footage of current generation esports competitors playing in front of TVs and computers. And you see an image of Akira looking face forward. You only can see his back, and he starts to turn around, and you see that the announcement is Virtual Fighter Cross Esports. And that was it. Basically, they said that they don't have much information to say right now. They're going to talk about more, but it looks like it's going to be a rejuvenation of the Virtual Fighter series, bringing it back, putting it back into esports. Remember, Virtua Fighter was a very huge arcade game in Japan for a very long time. It was one of the most important franchises Sega had. It was the big seller for them from the Sega Saturn, and unfortunately it's been basically dormant for a long time. The last game that came out was Virtua Fighter 5. It had a lot of revisions up till Final Showdown, and so we haven't had a new Virtua Fighter in a long time. So could this be Virtua Fighter 6, or is this just another version of Virtua Fighter 5 for internet esports or esports competitions? We'll probably hear something more soon. Hopefully it'll be during this weekend. Sega does have a lot of events, but if we don't, hopefully we get that information later on. Personally, for me, that's a huge announcement that they are going back to Virtual Fighter. They're going to start talking about it again. They're going to do something with it again. That's one of the franchises that I think Sega, unfortunately, has not done a good job keeping up its prestige. It's kind of fallen completely from the mindset of Japanese gamers, and it was such a fantastic game, and it deserves to come back. But Sega, of course, they've been really focused on bringing back their old franchises, focusing on their heritage and their classic Sega-ness to the core this year. Of course, bringing back the Sega Sanshiro character with his son in the commercials, bringing Sakura Taisen back, bringing the Sonic movie, and all these things. And this is just another step in them going and say, here's our legacy, and we're going to make it fun again for everyone. So great news from Sega there. Obviously, would love to have seen more news on other titles, but they're focusing on games that are coming out sooner, so obviously we didn't get a lot of new news there. Capcom had a show tonight in which they talked about three of their biggest titles that they have announced recently: Monster Hunter Rise, Monster Hunter Stories 2, and Resident Evil Village, or Resident Evil 8. Now, Monster Hunter Rise coming to the Switch later, not later, it's coming in early 2021, April, I believe. It got a new trailer, and they talked a lot about the gameplay changes. A lot of the gameplay footage was shown for the first time, other than the other trailer. It's Monster Hunter. It's going to be a fantastic title, and it's on the Switch, so it's going to be probably one of the biggest titles next year, no doubt about it. That's something that I think is going to be really interesting to see how well that game sells. I don't think it's going to sell as well as Animal Crossing, but I think it's going to be really close up there in some numbers, because Monster Hunter is a fantastic franchise that everyone loves and everyone wants to play in the gaming world in Japan. It's one of those big franchises that just does so well. And watching it, I think it looks great. Obviously, it doesn't have that graphical fidelity that Monster Hunter World did because of the Switch is less powerful, but it's all about the gameplay, and the gameplay is there, and it looks great, and for me it's fine, so I'm looking forward to that. And Monster Hunter Stories 2, didn't really focus so much on that one for myself. Obviously that's an RPG game. I didn't play the original, but it's nice that they're continuing that one, and that's coming out later next year as well. The Resident Evil 8 stuff, they had a nice little 7-8 minute video talking about mostly the changes that they've made in the game, the improvements they made in the game from 7 to 8. They focused a lot on the main character, Ethan Winters, how they were very, that character kind of grew into something of more of an interesting character for them as they were developing 7, and they really wanted to continue that character's story and find out what happens next to him. And that was sort of the one of the main goals of making this game, as they said. They showed some new footage in there. It looked a lot better. It looked a lot smoother than what we saw in the trailers as of late, which looks great. Looked fantastic. I love the first-person Resident Evil style. I love that, especially when it was in VR. They didn't say anything about VR as far as I know. I wish we could hear something about them bringing it to PSVR again. I would love that. They talked about like the fact that they want to make this game into like playing a horror movie, making it grander, bigger, making it scarier. That was one thing that they said. It's like, this is a scary game, even scarier than Resident Evil 7. And let me tell you, Resident Evil 7 was a scary game, one of the most frightening games I ever played. So that was fantastic to hear. But one of the big surprise announcements, one that I think is going to be very controversial if they go with this, is they said that one of the people on the panel had mentioned that we are looking, Capcom that is, that they were looking into seriously making this game for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. They said that they cannot promise that that's going to happen because it is a very difficult thing to do. This game is focused to be made on the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X/S, and the PC. It's a very heavily graphical title. It's got new lighting systems and it's got all these enhancements. So it might not be possible to be done, but they're looking into it for gamers of the last generation. There's obviously been a lot of controversy as of the last couple of weeks. Sony last week, when they announced a lot of their PS5 games were coming to the PS4 as well. Many people were angry that, oh, well, that means that they're going to be special because they're going to be like pushed down a bit because they have to run on the PlayStation 4 as well. I think that it will be interesting to see if they do that here. I don't think they're going to push down the quality of the game on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, but obviously they're going to have to crunch that game down to make it onto the other systems. Kind of reminds me of the old days when you had games that were released on like portable systems and every system you knew way back in the 16 and 8-bit era, and you got different experiences. So I think that's basically what we're getting there. Will it come to PS4, Xbox One? I don't know, but no one knows really yet, but it's an interesting bit of news. Other than that, Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory is getting a demo in mid-October. They had Square Enix had a big presentation showing off the game, showing off gameplay, talking about all its features, and they said a demo's coming in a few weeks, so that's something to look forward to. One thing I love about Square Enix, and when they make musical games and rhythm games, is that they're really fun. The Theatrical Rhythm Final Fantasy games were some of the most fun games I played on the 3DS, and I never had the Dragon Quest one. I really should pick that one up. So I will probably play this eventually. I'm a huge Kingdom Hearts fan, although I was really let down by 3. I still haven't finished it. But I love the music in that game, and I think that's a game that'll be fun to try out, and it'll be interesting to see what that game does in the next couple months when it comes out. Interesting enough, that was not the only news today. There was one other bit of Japanese game news that we should talk about that was non-TGS news, and that is that Konami has released on the GOG store, on the PC GOG store, Good Old Games, I believe is what the Fnac is. It's the CD Projekt Red site that sells the no DRM games. They're releasing Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance, and Collector Series of Castlevania and the Contra games, all for the PC. It came out of nowhere. We kind of heard that there was some sort of ratings about these games a couple days ago, and now we know what it is. It's that they're bringing these games back to the PC. GOG Games, of course, is a company that likes to take not only new games and release them without DRM, but also go back to old games and from classic era and bring them back so gamers can play them again. MGS 1 and 2 are fantastic, and so PC gamers, hey, if you never played it, that's a great way to do it. Go get the PC versions. They're going to be fun to play with, and I think it's fantastic to see that. You know, I got to say something. A lot of people talk about Konami, and they talk about how Konami is just like, oh, they only do, Pachinko stuff, and they don't even care about games. Interesting enough, Konami still makes games. They still do a lot of games. They still do a lot of game stuff and do a lot of things that are involved with children's toys. And of course they do the pachinko stuff as well, but they're still very much into the video game industry, and it's really good to see them porting these games, putting these games on the PC. Hopefully they're ported really well, and obviously we would all love to see those great franchises come back, and hopefully Konami does it or some other company picks it up. We've heard a lot of rumors about Sony and a possible Silent Hill reboot. That would be interesting, but who knows if that'll happen. Anyway, those were the big news stories of today, of day 2 of Tokyo Game Show. Again, not the biggest, greatest news day that there was ever for Tokyo Game Show. But tomorrow's going to be interesting. We got a lot of companies talking. One thing I'm looking forward to, Level 5. They're going to be talking about this one robot game that I really like, Megaton Musashi, I believe it's called. They changed the name recently, so Megaton Cube Musashi or something like that. It's a game that they showed off years ago. Hopefully they finally can tell us a date when that's coming out. And I think Bandai Namco is tomorrow as well. If not, it's going to be on Sunday. But there's still a lot of stuff to showcase tomorrow and on Sunday. So hopefully we'll get some surprises. Hopefully we'll get some new news and some things to talk about. Because, yeah, Tokyo Game Show, it's not the biggest in terms of new announcements. But when we get new announcements, they're kind of cool. And that's basically what was today. So anyway, I want to say thank you to everyone who watched my first video. Notice the numbers were really up, so thank you very much, and I hope that you're watching this one. And keep watching, keep sharing, keep liking if you like it, dislike if you don't. If you want to see more videos, subscribe and check out my videos. I'm talking about Japanese games all the time. I got some reviews I've been meaning to do that I'll get to eventually, and I do a lot of commentary on games and on Japanese stuff. So if you're very interested in that, definitely keep it on here. Anyway, I'll talk to you more tomorrow after day 3 of Tokyo Game Show. Until then, have a good night. See you later. Tune in tomorrow for more TGS news from day 3 of TGS 2020 on REVIII Gaming Matt.